and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Tara.
Hi, I'm Nick.
And I'm Josh. Today we are going to be going over a work from whom I think is an underrated young adult literature author. His name is Robert Cormier, and you may recognize works of his such as The Chocolate War and I Am the Cheese. The work that we're going to be going over today is After the First Death. Like many of his works, is very honest, dark, heavy. I think that this is probably the darkest and heaviest that I've read from him thus far. The discussion starter that I have for this, which it does cover a lot. After the First Death follows two stories. In the odd chapters, a general's son is responding to events taking place and the mission that his general father is setting him out to accomplish. The even chapters direct the plot more, in which four terrorists hijack a bus and engage in a standoff, knowing that authorities will respond and potentially give them what they want. This bus contains a teenage bus driver and young children going to a summer day camp. Do you find the events in this book reflecting current events or events during our lifetime in any which way?
It reflects on the terrorism that we actually have lived through, 9/11, Columbine, everything else, what's going on in the Middle East. Even though it was originally written in 1979, it's still very relevant for today. As you guys are going to learn when we discuss, you're going to see how relevant it is.
And 1979 also, there was a lot of other friction taking place within the Middle East and among radical groups in that area. This was released in the spring of 1979. In the fall of 1979 was when the Iran hostage crisis began, where those from the United States and Canada were held hostage by some radicals from Iran. This was during the Carter administration. They remained imprisoned until January 20th, 1981, which was the day that Ronald Reagan assumed office, and as soon as he assumed office, all of them were released. When I first looked over it, I thought it was going to be more reflective of a school shooting. It turned out being more of a hijacking, where hijackers were engaged in a standoff. They were looking to utilize those that they were holding hostage on the bus in order to negotiate with the police and the military and ultimately with the American government about what they wanted to get out of it.
Yeah, definitely. I can only imagine what it was like to read it in 79 or 80 when the fear of a bus or plane that you were on being hijacked and the stakes being as high as they could possibly be is like a reality for a lot of people. They also get into this book from the perspective, like you said, one of the perspectives is one of the terrorists. So, in this story, it's a terrorist attack. We see a lot more behind the intentions and the ideology of both sides here than in a lot of traditional, hijacking terrorist stories.
I found very interesting was that even though I did not have any sense of remorse or sympathy for any of the hijackers or terrorists in this piece, I think I learned more about their perspective and why it is the way that they are. It was intriguing and interesting to be able to develop a greater sense of understanding as to what their motives were and what it is that they were after. The one quote that I really think sticks with me, and I think really describes what Robert Cormier was, this is what he put in to hopefully get us to understand better how the story should flow, is my quote, as in Kate, "She said nothing for a moment. She was really sad for him, the way it's possible to feel for something you do not understand. He was still a monster, of course. But who made him a monster? This world, his world. Who was guilty then? The monster or the world that created?" I think that this is a key quote in describing the mentality of a terrorist, but I think this is the way that they're looking to depict Miro, and it's also the reason that out of the point of views that they cover, he is the only hijacker / terrorist that they cover a point of view from, because they cover Kate, they cover Ben, they cover Mark, his general father, they cover Raymond, but they don't cover any of the other hijackers, be it Artkin, Stroll, Antibes, because I think Miro has that greater complexity to him, because he's just getting his footing as far as being a adult in their mind is concerned, somebody that's going to make an impact for their cause.
I'm very hesitant to say I have any remorse for Miro. There's definitely something there, though. And as far as Robert Cormier goes, if you're going to write a terrorist character and you want the audience to have some remorse or feel bad for them, I think this is how you do it. You make it basically a child who was raised from very early age, completely indoctrinated, and Miro's brother is killed. His parents are dead. At what point, was there any off-ramp for Miro? And it's even as Miro and Kate's relationship develops, Kate realizes that it's not just that he's a monster that doesn't feel bad. He maybe can't. He doesn't understand that he even should feel bad. To Miro, the way that he talks about it, it's like, this is the way the world works. This is what I do. This is my purpose. And he doesn't even seem to feel guilty or bad about anything.
Brainwashed from a child. It's kind of cultish. But they're starting them young. Even if we just say, let's just say that Arkin is his father, and we don't really know if it could have been just the mother who died.
Mm-hmm.
Finding Arkin's actually, let's just say Arkin found this group of people, fell into them, killed, didn't want to kill his son, put his son in and threw it. Started from the beginning, and you're not gonna have a normal child. You're gonna have what they put in their brain, in them.
What comes
how
out
they're
is what
raised.
goes in.
I don't think we're supposed to know whether or not Arkin really is Miro's father.
Yeah, just saying, let's just say.
Yeah, because Kate used that as a possibility to try and get to Miro. In that sense, it doesn't necessarily matter, because we do know that Miro had an older brother. Mm-hmm. His older brother was killed. Parents were killed without them even knowing it. It was from Miro found out through his brother, who found out through another source. Mm-hmm. You could say that it is his father, but at the same time, is that just being used as a ploy? And
it is being used as a ploy, but I was just trying to make, when I said that, I was just trying to make a point. But also, Arkin and anybody else higher up is like a father figure to these kids. Mm-hmm. Even they're not great, that's the only thing that they know, and they're running from. These older people know another way of life. They're just trying to have those kids in their agenda.
Yeah, definitely. Their kids are totally indoctrinated. You said brainwash, something close to the brainwashing, right? Because the title of the book, After the First Death, to me, that's come to mean the first death is the first person Miro's going to kill. Especially in the beginning, it's set up that Miro is going to kill someone on his first... this isn't his first operation, but he never had to kill anybody, or it's like a rite of passage in this terrorist group to kill somebody your first time. Makes you a man, and it means you've transcended adolescence. Miro is ready to kill his first person, and it's the bus driver of the planned hijacking, who's going to be an older man bus driver. When they hijack the bus, it turns out that he was sick, and his niece is going to drive the bus today, and that's Kate.
Yes.
And so, right from the jump, the plan is changed. They don't kill the bus driver. They decide to use her to take care of the kids during the hijacking, and Miro, his way to become an adult and a serious member of this organization that's his entire life, is that's basically gone, for now.
It feels like throughout the entire thing, Arkin, his motive is the whole ideal that for every hijacker that you kill, we kill a child. Miro still had his mind on killing Kate. Ultimately, 2 kids were killed. Kevin was killed because when Arkin was giving out the candy that was drugged up,
he was either allergic to whatever
Kevin McCann, he reacted in a way that killed him.
And then Arkin used that kid in this weird ritual dance type thing to get attention of the authorities.
He put him over the bridge.
But he danced before he...
Yeah, it was, there was a pretty...
elaborate show, and when he was done his dance, he just threw the kid off the bridge.
But they lowered him down, I think. So the first child that dies was an accident.
Yes.
They didn't mean to kill the child. Arkin capitalizes on the situation by playing it up as, hey, we've already killed one kid, we mean business. And he goes out and like you said, he holds the child's body above his head and seems to do some kind of dance, which to me was just like to really show off what he had done and to really to elicit that reaction of like, you know, this person is willing to go way beyond what I would consider to what anyone would be considered to be a line to cross it, and then they lower Kevin's body down, I think, through the gaps in the railroad tracks because the hijacked bus is out on the bridge. They lower Kevin's body down, and then later it's mentioned that basically an autopsy reveals that the death was probably accidental. But now that I say that, I think there may be some parallel between when the hijackers accidentally killed. Because there's a scene when the military sniper kills one of the hijackers, but it was apparently by accident. It's interesting that the first two deaths were both accidental.
You can argue that it was accidental. Or you're talking about kid deaths or just deaths?
Yeah, I think first Kevin dies and then...
Raymond's the next kid to die.
Yeah, but the next character to die is Antivia.
Saw as accidental. Based off of the threat that they made, they went forth with it, and they choose Raymond because earlier Raymond refuses to eat the candy because his mother told him that it's not good for his teeth. He initially questioned Artkin's decision, and Artkin said, well, this time it's okay. You can always go home and brush your teeth afterward. Because they want people that are going to conform, do as they're told, and that Raymond, even if he was unintentionally, just because he questioned, they saw that as an indicator or a threat, and so he was the target that they went after.
That was probably the saddest moment for me in the book. Like that's the elicited the biggest reaction out of me. You know, you have the relationship between Kate and Raymond has formed. They're gonna work together. They're each other's only real like lifeline on the bus for help. When Raymond is ultimately taken out and killed, that's when for me it really hit the soft spot.
That was probably the moment that made me the most
it made me angry, actually.
I would say I was more of an I felt more angry.
I knew another child was gonna die, but I wasn't. It's like kind of like you didn't want it to be. I was like, no, not Raymond, but it's gonna be Raymond, but I don't want it to be Raymond.
Yeah.
Type of thing. It's kind of like another book. I remember the Da Vinci Code. I didn't want it to be this. I'm not gonna reveal who it is, but like the person who it is, I didn't want it to be that person because he was such a good character.
Yeah.
You said that it was very reflective of Columbine.
Yes, because like you believe in this, I'll shoot you. Or if you don't conform, you're gonna die. Like especially like with you're gonna rob a bank and there's people there, you gotta do what they say. You can't be a hero. You're dead. In this situation, Raymond was almost child hero. So there's good no matter what. The two heroes, Kate and Raymond, ultimately gonna pass on. No matter however it's gonna play out, they're gonna die.
There's definitely that danger that comes with basically everyone that didn't do exactly as they were told by the hijackers end up dying. You know, like Kate's first attempt to save everybody, or when she starts the bus and tries to back away, you know, the plan fails, but she still has that, she can't give up that hope and that instinct to survive and to do anything that it takes to get the kids home safely. And eventually she does put them way before herself, and she decides that if anybody, you know, should be killed or...
should be me.
Yeah, she accepts that, but she won't accept the deaths of the children.
I think that it was something that you could admire for her, that she was willing to sacrifice herself for them. She was looking to find her bravery. She wasn't a very brave person initially because she wet herself a few times.
and that's the one thing I didn't like. That's what knocked down the star for me was the
way he wrote her,
the urination. And I'm like, one time is fine, but like two other times.
Well,
really?
you know, I also wondered that. At first, I was like really unhappy with the way that Kate was written, and
not the way I just didn't like the everything else. I liked how she was written. It was just the urination part I didn't understand. I mean, I know people who are scared. They do it once, but not three. Well,
there's a couple times, you know, where he's describing her body or something that's going on with her body, and I found myself wondering, like, is this really necessary, or what is this adding? And now what I think is like it's almost like she's not just scared and not brave. She's like overly. It's like almost like a caricature of someone who's scared. So scared, you know, scared into inaction, wetting yourself. but she does mention that that's been something her whole life. When it's stressed out, that it happens, and so I think it's probably mentioned more than it needs to be. It kind of sets it up where you go from someone who wet themselves to one of the bravest characters in the story.
Even though she did that, all you had to do was mention it once. And we could just assume that she did it more than other times. It didn't need to be on page that many times. Once is enough because he made the point. And even, like you said, he didn't set it up. That's what happens when she gets very scared.
Yeah, there could be a few reasons, too. I mean, it gives her the reason to undress.
And then eventually she doesn't do it anymore. Either maybe it's because that she has gotten used to the situation, but then again, it's gotten to the point where it's become very uncomfortable.
I have a couple complaints too, for sure.
Yeah, I would say
stars that were lost.
I think that the incidents that took place between the hijackers and the people at the bus, that was a stronger story than the one with Interdelta with Ben and Mark.
Yeah, I think so too.
The one with the whole Delta thing, I think I wouldn't mind if it was a slightly little longer. Not was it 200 pages?
Another 50 pages.
Maybe another 300 tops, whatever pages of more explanation of the Delta, and that in itself, the Delta, that in itself is also military.
I think it'd be
cultish.
I think it's best to clarify the significance of Interdelta, and that was the fact that when the negotiation and the contingencies that the hijackers had put forth were, number one, they were to release the political prisoners. Number two was to give them $10 million. And the third one was the one that was the most crucial to both sides, and that was to dismantle Interdelta, which is filled with its own conflictions and confusion, but it's intentionally meant to do so because it's critical for the defense of the nation. In what way, we don't know, and as common people, we really aren't supposed to know.
So us readers are the common people?
Most of us readers would be viewed as the common people.
Yeah.
You know how we were saying how Morrow was recruited by the group, and then I think the Interdelta is the combat against the other terrorist children with military children.
Yeah.
I think that's what that was for.
Yeah, definitely there is that parallel between Miro and Artkin and Ben and General Ben's dad.
Yes.
That both have forsaken what is ethical and moral, especially by indoctrinating these kids, making their lives a purpose outside of just them being a person, but they're like a tool, to be studied and be used, and you have Ben and Miro both going through that, and so I think what I'm hearing you say is there's really no better moral argument to make for either side. It's what you do to defend yourself. If it's as bad as what the enemy is doing, then there's a really blurry line between who's the good and bad guys and what is good and bad behavior.
You can put both of them on equal footing. As far as the fact that both sides have their own conflictions as to how they value human life is concerned. However, it still gets to me is the fact that it's never okay and never acceptable to go onto a bus, hold innocent people hostage,
cause their deaths,
threaten their lives.
Yeah.
That to me is where it strays off from my point of view.
I would agree with that.
And the fact that there is no reason for them to do so aside from fulfill an agenda, which you can ultimately call it an agenda, but to fulfill something that they have been led to believe all of their lives. These people aren't threatening them. You can say that the government may be causing them a great sense of grief, but the way in which they're doing it is still immoral.
Yeah.
Earlier you had made mention to the fact that making the comparisons to people, how would you compare Artkin and how would you compare, and the fact that there was a higher leader, his name was Sadiq. Artkin was the one, he was basically the captain of this operation. You had Stroll and Antibi were more seasoned per se, and then Mira was he was the one that was up and coming. You could say that Sadiq was like the Bin Laden figure, and he sent out this mission, because they eventually captured Sadiq. But he was the one that they ultimately responded to, even though you never saw him. The fact that they had to deliver a stone from their homeland.
Piece of proof that
Yes.
that Sidi had. So yeah, that I thought was really interesting. Is as the terrorist operation starts to fall apart. I mean, although it arguably goes wrong right from the beginning. You know, they kill a kid by accident, then one of them gets killed in what is described as an accident. And accepted that way. When things started to go downhill, Arkin can't really be sure whether the government, the military, is in communication with Arkin and the terrorists and say, we've captured your leader, like, this is over, basically. But they can't accept that because of the messenger's gambit, or whatever it's called, that's mentioned in the book, where they could be lying. They could say, we have your leader, and what you're doing now doesn't matter, but they could be lying. So Arkin asks for proof that they have Sidi by asking them to go get this arbitrary stone that really ultimately doesn't matter, because Arkin describes it as like a diversionary tactic that's to buy them time. One of my favorite parts is when the general calls up, gets his son, because someone needs to go and bring the stone to the hijackers. Another person needs to be introduced into the situation. Arkin and the terrorists don't want a professional to do the delivery because they plan to interrogate whoever delivers the stone for information, and they worry that a professional will be trained to withhold the information. The general chooses his son because he knows what his son's reaction will be, because he's been studying him and watching him his whole life, not just as his dad, but also as the administrator of this secret government program, Interdelta. When the general pulls Ben into the room to tell him, hey, you know, I need you to do this, that's when they have the phone call. There, he takes a phone call in which it is told him that the attack on the terrorists, to end the operation, the government, the military is going to attack them at 9:30. He writes that down. And as the reader, I thought, oh, I hope that Ben didn't see that note, because then when he is sent to the bridge and he's tortured, he'll give up that information. And then you find out that that is the plan the whole time. He was set up for failure. The father knew that he would crack under interrogation, under torture. So he allowed him to overhear the phone call, allowed him to see the note about 9:30 real quickly. And when ultimately he's tortured on the bus with the fingers, whatever they are, I don't know, it must be horrible. I didn't Google it, but it sounds bad. He spills the beans. The attack's at 9:30, but it's not at 9:30. It's at 8:30, and they've engineered this. So I thought that was so well done.
And then after all that happens, the son ends up committing suicide anyway. He goes back to the bridge, jumps off. And that last chapter featuring the father and son, it was the father having an internal dialogue with his
son,
his dead son, even though it's more so all going through his mind. We can pretty much project that he is in an institution at the time. So.
Yeah, he blames himself for his son's death, and the ghost of his son that's in his head is not going to let him off the hook.
No.
You know, if anything, I think he even says, because the general, the father, is saying to the voice of his son in his head, you need to go back, go away, go back to being buried away. The voice of the son says, well, maybe you need to go.
And he's like, no, I'm not going. And ultimately, it seems like the son's taking over the father's body. Like it was essentially, that's what it essentially felt like.
Yeah, he's been taken over by the grief, by the guilt. It's totally crippling. I did think there was a lot of like exposition in the book. Especially in like the first half of the book, I found a pretty. I don't know if I have any specific examples highlighted, but there was some real scenes of Arkin explaining basically the entire plot of the book up until that point again for another character. Or there was a couple times where what's transpired already in the book is reiterated a couple of times, and I don't know, I didn't think it was that hard to follow, so I didn't think it really needed to be stated over and over again. Kind of some of
that was kind of
the beats were hit again and again in some part. In the second half, I didn't have any problem really.
Sometimes it seemed like he needed to have faith in his readers.
Yeah.
And it seemed like he, I don't know what the age range this was supposed to be
I would say it's for his time, young adult readers.
Yeah, you know what? That makes a lot of sense, because I didn't know it was young adult.
It reads very...
Because his work is very, especially for this generation, because it is very dark. It's very morbid.
Yeah.
The way, I mean, the details were things that you could find in adult literature. However, a high schooler should be able to read this and react to it appropriately.
Yes, a high schooler. This would be perfect for a high school person. Even with today, you can even have huge discussions about it in a school setting about past that we grew up with, that we know. Not like 9/11. I bet you every one of you in this room knows where they were in 9/11, and especially if it's someone's birthday.
Yeah, I know your birthday is on September 11th. I know a few other people who have birthdays on.
And here's the weird part is the fact that I was scheduled to be. My Mom picked the date. I was scheduled to be. I think I was scheduled to be born at 8:00 or something, or 9, one of the two. And that's when the first or second thing hit.
You were born at 8:46.
No, I'm just saying like.
Sorry to laugh.
Not exactly the time, but 9, and rounding it off, not exact time.
Okay.
I'm sure there was a pregnant lady who was in the hospital having the baby exactly at that time.
Of course.
Come on.
Everybody's born at every minute, and everybody dies at every.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about a character like Artkin is that you would think that someone like him there would be no personality, there'd be no remorse, everything would be by the book. There would be no dimension as far as his decision-making skills were concerned. It would be very robotic.
He's kind of like the villains in one of the Die Hard movies. That's what I'm thinking. The villain and make him be a terrorist. And I'm talking about the one with I think the fourth one, the one with the other, I think Samuel Jackson or something in the first book. The one where half full, and the villain was Jeremy Irons. I thought when I thought of Akron, that's who I pictured is Jeremy Irons in villain form.
That scene where he basically shares responsibility for allowing Kate to
go unsearched,
to close the bus and try and escape the situation. The fact that they didn't search her for anything, such as the key to start the bus, that Miro was able to, that he should have come, at the very least, went onto the bus while Miro had stepped away.
Yeah.
And or they made so many small mistakes, they didn't search. Usually when they hijack, they search everybody. If they're not.
Yeah, they searched her,
anyone,
but I don't know if they. So she had a spare key to the bus, and I mean, I definitely.
Where was
it was in her wallet. It was in a pocket inside of her wallet. Was the spare key to the bus.
Then she hid it in her shoe.
Once she remembered she had it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. I mean, why would she still have her wallet at that point? Why would you allow your hostages to?
Have
and
wallets?
there are definitely some.
You gotta collect. They collect personal items and they collect a bunch of things.
Alrighty then. Do we have any final thoughts that we didn't go over?
We didn't really talk about the relationship between Miro and Kate, which is a large part of the book. Is or a lot of the plot when it surrounds Miro is he's obviously attracted to Kate. He has feelings for her. He doesn't understand. In the question between nature and nurture, I do think this is a comment on no matter how indoctrinated and from what age, there are always going to be things that make you a human that you can't avoid. You know,
you can't avoid love. You can't avoid attraction.
Exactly. And Kate, she uses that to her advantage at times. It mostly is a disadvantage for Miro, but it does humanize him, which at times you really need that because he can be such a monster.
But at the same time, he still has that intent that he's going to have to kill her. Yes.
Yeah.
By the time things take fruition, he does not care what happens to the kids. If the kids end up all getting released, that to him is not a concern. Killing Kate, though, is what he wants to make sure happen. And when he finally does capture her, and they go into this little, they go into the woods. It's in this little
kids fort.
Yeah, little kids fort. She tries one last time, because by this time he's wounded and their blood is intermingling, and she tries to console him like a mother would console a child, and then he finally just takes the gun and shoots her in the heart.
Yeah.
It just shows that at the end of the day, he stays true to his mission.
Yeah, the book started with him going to kill her, and it ended that way too.
Yeah, and then he escapes.
There's the one guy, a truck driver who has to go to the bathroom, takes the opportunity. It just leaves you right at that. It leaves his story right at that.
And it makes you think, like, oh, where's this kid going now? Or, like, he has all the elements of, like, the brainwashing, and even if they said the leader's gone, there's that one still left carrying it.
Yeah, he could become the next Arkin, the next Sadi.
He'd have to go up quite a few ranks to get to Sadiq.
But like, I'm just saying, like, just the guy's gone, who's gonna take the place, and you're thinking in your head, like, what's he planning on his own?
Yeah, or that these organizations can't ever be stopped because there's there's no way to get everybody to stop. There'll always be one left who says, "I'll take it upon myself."
Because if you ever know, like, with cults, there's always that one who's so immersed into it, even though you can do all the work to undo the damage, there's only so much. There's always that one.
The book really was not what I was expecting.
It's kind of like a parasite.
I think it really took a direction that I didn't necessarily expect it to take, but I thought that it was very fulfilling in the way that I learned so much, and it really got under my skin.
I agree.
Like, you pray for these people. Because you're thinking the role of every character is going on, and you're in the moment, and then when everything's done, you're sitting there like, what did I just witness? Like, what did I just read?
One of the...
It's hard-hitting, and a lot of people who actually, if you guys need it, make sure you check your trigger warnings. Storygraph is very good for that. And it lists everything. And even if you look at the reviews on Goodreads as well, some reviewers will put the trigger warnings in there.
That's a good idea. I liked, some of the themes I really liked was, they talk about the comparison between bravery and cowardice. Or bravery and, patriotism, and maybe cowardice or stupidity or some negative.
But, like, when
that hit home for me
but
because...
when does, like, patriotism come in, you can have patriotism, but also be cowardice.
You know, it's hard to really find that line between a truly patriotic thing and where that should stop. Like, obviously, Arkin and Miro, they love wherever it is they come from, which is never really mentioned. You know, their homeland, right? They're patriotic for their homeland, for their group of people, to a degree that is dangerous.
And their homeland could be anywhere. I don't think it's the Middle East, because people are gonna think Middle East.
But what about...
Please don't think that.
What about the general... Is he, compared to Arkin, is he patriotic to the same degree? I mean, he's using his own son.
He's using his own son for what he thinks is is good means, and it's not. There's a certain point where it's like, think of a glacier. You're getting, like, the tippy bottom underneath the deep.
Like an iceberg, you mean? The part you see is just a small part.
But, like, but the one that as far as they're going, it's toward the bottom.
Yeah, you don't see that.
The deep in the ocean where you're gonna get, like...
Yeah.
Pressured.
It's an interesting question.
The morality within this piece, and to what degree, what are you willing to do and sacrifice, and what other people you're willing to sacrifice in order for what you find is the greater good. How would we rate this? 0 to 5 stars, half stars permitted?
I rated it a solid 3 stars. I think I mentioned another time was because of the urination too many times. He kept putting in the very beginning, rehashing the point of view of the reason, and he needed faith in the readers.
I'm going to give it a 4. 4 is a good number for me. It loses a couple points just for some of the exposition, and I felt like I was reading the same paragraph a couple times, but since it is young adult, maybe it could get some leeway for that. But I thought it was a lot of fun. The first half, if I was reading it just for fun, I don't know if I would have finished it. I definitely wouldn't have finished it as quickly as I did for this, but I'm glad I did, because the second half was so much stronger for me than the first half. And once the action starts, it's like, you're right there.
I think it was easier to understand at that point, especially the odd number chapters. And I'm giving it 4 stars as well. I think that those odd number chapters where you see Ben and his father, General Mark, up until a certain point, I was wondering what their significance was to the flow of the story.
Yeah.
To me, I didn't feel anything from it. Then when you see the connection that was made, perhaps looking back, but maybe not, you may develop a greater understanding upon rereading it. But still, upon initial impression, it just didn't stick out to me the way that the story with the hijackers going onto the bus was concerned. I also realized that there were some things that were written a bit wonky as far as, and that these were technicalities, grammatical things that could have been. Some of them are just errors on the publishing, because I'm pretty sure writers do make plenty of grammatical mistakes, but there was an aspect that really stuck out reading it. But I still think that it was very good and impactful. This is probably the darkest Cormier work that I've read, and a lot of his works are dark, heavy. Usually the protagonists in his pieces don't win, or if they do, they go through quite a traumatic or life-changing experience that is more traumatic or more hellish than anything.
I think this was just a good discussion piece book, a good book to read, a discussion. If you guys want to, if people want to read it, I think it should be like a book club book. If you can read it on your own if you want to, but like it's mostly like a discussion book. I think it would be a perfect required reading for school. Like, you know, like one of those books that you read.
Definitely provokes an interesting
like
conversation.
have a good conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that in itself adds merit to it. If you are interested in reading After the First Death, here is my copy of the book. A lot of his books that I own are published by Laurel Leaf Books, and they look very similar with his name, the title, an image based off of the nature of what it is he's writing. I've read 4 of his other books: The Chocolate War, I Am the Cheese, The Rag and Bone Shop, and Heroes. Be sure to join us next time on another episode of Literary Gladiators. For now, keep reading.